Good morning, friends. Welcome back to She's At It Again. My name is Tanya, and today I don't even have the kitchen lights on. The sun is so bright. It is fabulous outside. Beginning of fall, but man, it almost feels like spring. It feels so good out there. And these days just give me more energy than the cloudy ones do, that's for sure. Today I'm going to make a recipe that I keep seeing repeatedly in different publications, different cookbooks, and a friend of mine just gave me a really neat cookbook. She's kind of getting rid of some stuff, kind of downsizing, and she's so sweet. She finds things that she knows certain people will really enjoy, and she said, I knew you would appreciate this. It's a signed copy of a cookbook that I find just very intriguing. Now, the author doesn't necessarily use items that I would use, but the recipes themselves, I can change around and use things that I know are better. For instance, the one we're going to make today is called tomato pie, and I keep seeing this recipe a lot of places, but hers just looks really good. She adds beautiful pictures in the publication, but she starts with a frozen pie pastry, and I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry. Those ingredients are not something you really need to be eating. Just being honest. But I can make a pie crust. So I'm going to make a pie crust. Some of the things I'll switch around. She uses a name brand mayonnaise. I'm not using that. I'm using a homemade mayonnaise because the name brand ones out there, most of them, first ingredient, soybean oil. Not happening here, not this old lady. So go with me as we make a tomato pie, and I'm going to see how this thing tastes because it looks really good. It gets so many high reviews from people saying, oh, I remember this as a kid. It was so good. So let's check this out. All right, in my clear bowl here, I have 1 cup of just all-purpose flour and a ½ teaspoon of Himalayan pink salt. That's it in there. So I have 6 tablespoons of butter, and this is frozen. I just took it out of the freezer. My grater is cold as well. I just took it out of the freezer. And we're going to grate our butter into the flour. You don't necessarily have to do this step, but after years and years and years and years and years of making pie pastry, I found that if you have time to freeze the butter, this just works better. It makes a beautiful flaky pastry. And if you don't have this, then by all means use your pastry blender and blend that butter in. But I just find that this works really well if I have the time and I can remember to put the butter in the freezer. Take the grater out every once in a while and kind of stir in the flecks of butter. And go retrieve any that are trying to escape across the countertop. This is going to make just a single pastry pie because it only has a bottom crust. When it starts getting tiny like this, I have to be careful because I wind up grating the end of my finger, and that's not anything I'd planned on doing today. Ideally, your mixture should look somewhat like a chunky oatmeal, just at this stage, not necessarily when you start blending it up, but at this stage. Because what you're trying to do is coat those little globs of butter, those little tiny ones. Each one, there's about the size you're looking for. You want to coat each one with butter, or with flour. Coat each little glob of butter with flour. I apparently can't stir and talk at the same time. So this is what our mixture looks like. See those little globs in there? They're just coated with flour. So the flour is going to encapsulate that butter in there. When it gets hot, when it bakes, the steam from the butter inside is going to come out, and each one of those little globs are going to be separated by the layers of flour, and that's what makes the flakiness of it. There's a science to it, and I'm not very good at explaining it, but that's my best rendition of what's taking place. Now, we're making our pastry this morning, but I'm not going to bake it off until this afternoon. In fact, I'm just making the dough, and I'm going to put it in wax paper and keep it in the fridge until I'm ready to roll it out later on this afternoon. All right, let's get our water and our sour cream. It's our big tub of sour cream. And I need 1 tablespoon, and I have 3 tablespoons of water chilling in this glass. So 1 level tablespoon of sour cream. Keeping it as cold as I can. Try not to even touch the glass any more than I have to. All right, make a well in the center. Pour it in and make sure you get as much of it out as you can. That's pretty clean. Give this a stir, and basically you're just getting it to the point to where it'll kind of stick together, because you're going to start thinking to yourself, okay, this is not enough water. She didn't tell us to add enough water. This is not enough. But trust me, this will come together and it will be just the right consistency. See, it kind of looks dry, kind of like it's sprinkled on some sawdust or something. So what I like to do is get all of it off the walls of my bowl and then start raking it off the fork. Taking the back of my fork and pushing down and turning the bowl. I'm kind of mashing the back of it with the back of, or mashing it with the back of my fork, pushing it all together into a ball. Now you'll take your hands and just start pushing it together. And you're not kneading this, so don't misunderstand. This is not kneading. This is simply pressing it together. Now if you break it open, the center will be a little more moist, and you can pick up the other pieces of it. But all we're trying to do is just get everything stuck together in one big mass. Sometimes if I stick my finger into it, then it hits kind of a wetter spot inside, and the little dry ingredients will stick to it better. This recipe has never failed me, if you can believe that. Okay, see how it's picked up all the pieces in there pretty much, and then we just start pressing them together. I'm not going to leave anything in there, don't worry. I'll even get the rest of it off my fingers toward the end. All right, set that aside, and here's my wax paper. I'm going to push that down, get the rest of it off my fingers there. And we're going to chill this. And it doesn't necessarily have to be chilled at this point. You can go ahead and roll this out into a pie crust right now. But I'm going to chill mine just because I have some errands to run, and I'll come back and finish this. And we'll get our other ingredients together. We're going to get our filling made. And this is using fresh tomatoes out of my friend's garden. So I'm super, super excited about this, because it's not just any old tomato. These are ones that really taste like tomatoes, because they're good summer tomatoes. Okay, put your wax paper around it like this so it doesn't dry out. just like that. Okay, we're gonna put this in the fridge. We're gonna let this sit for a while, and when we come back, we'll start making our insides to the pie. We're gonna put it all together, and we'll bake it off later this afternoon, so it ought to be fun. Okay, here we go. We're going to finish our pie. I have shredded the cheese. I'll show everything to you, but for right now, we're going to roll out our pie crust. So I'll let it set out for just maybe, it's been out for maybe 30 minutes or so. So it's not hard, it's squishy, but it's not floppy wet. So I'm going to put a little bit of flour on the countertop. Get out our wooden rolling pin. I have a wooden rolling pin and I have a marble rolling pin. And it's funny because as soon as I reach in the drawer, I know which one I'm going to need, but I can't even tell you what differentiates the two. I guess, I don't know, maybe if something really needs a lot of pressure to it, like a flour tortilla or something like that, I'll use the marble one. I don't know, sometimes I use the wooden one. Anyway, we're using the wooden one this time, and it doesn't really matter what you have. My grandmother claims that when she and my granddad were first married, they couldn't afford anything like that. They couldn't afford kitchen utensils like, you know, gadgety things like that. So when she wore out her broom, he cut the handle in a length that would be appropriate, and she used a broom handle for her rolling pin for years before she ever actually got a rolling pin. So I'm just grateful for having any. Okay, you don't want to incorporate just a whole lot of flour into it. You just want to use your flour for keeping it from sticking to the countertop. Oh, I better get my pie pan. That would always help, wouldn't it? Okay, guess which one was on the top? Blue speckled enamelware pan. That's becoming my favorite one. See, I'm just adding a tiny bit at a time. Let me tilt this down a little bit more so you can see what I'm doing. And right now, it is about 4:15 in the afternoon, obviously. And so we're going to have this for dinner tonight. And my husband just came in a while ago and he said, "What are we having for dinner?" And I said, "Tomato pie." And he hesitated for just a minute and he said, "Well, that sounds like a really delicious dinner." And I said, "Yeah, it does to me too." So even if it's not, he'll tell me it is. But I have high hopes for this because this is fresh tomatoes from the garden. It's my friend's garden, it's not mine. But anyway, the tomatoes are fabulous. I can see the little specks of butter in this. I don't know how clearly you can see it with the light like it is, but there's a kind of a chunk of butter and specks throughout. And then I see little specks of the pink Himalayan salt in there too, which is kind of cool. Be sure your edges are the same thickness as the rest of it because you're going to fold those over anyway. If anything, you want them a little bit thinner. Just don't have them thicker on the edge than you do in the center. Okay, it's okay to have flour on the outside. You just don't want to incorporate it into the dough as you're rolling it out. That was kind of my point I was trying to get across a while ago. Maybe not the best way to describe it, but you want to keep it from sticking to anything. Okay, now we'll fold this in half. We're just going to lay it halfway across, and then we unfold it like that. Gently with your fingers, push it down in there to where it is seated securely in the pan, and position it where you want it. And if you have long fingernails, this is really, really tough to do because they get in the way of everything. They poke a hole in your pastry. That's why I keep short fingernails. as much as I possibly can. I'm not a fan of long nails. I used to have them when I was younger, and I thought they were so pretty, and then they got to be annoying. So I'm old, and I really don't care for people looking at my hands. So I don't need long fingernails. And especially I don't need my fingernails painted. I do not want to draw attention to my hands. All right, fold this under. As you can see how I'm doing it right there. This is going to be baked with the ingredients in it, and we don't need to poke holes in the bottom to prevent it bubbling up, because then our ingredients might go through the bottom. All right, just kind of smooth this out on the edge like this, and then we're going to crimp it. We always have to make it pretty, no matter what. With your fingers like this, and this one holding the edge, you're going to kind of grab and twist just slightly. And they'll all be in the same direction. And we'll go around the circumference of it twice. The first time is just to press them in place, and the second time is to make sure they have a high edge to them. Kind of embellish the crimping, if you will. All right, we're going to try to work fast, just because we want our crust to stay firm. All right, first thing we're going to do is put down a layer of tomatoes. And I've got one little spot on this one I'm going to cut away. It says to put these on a paper towel just to keep them dry. First of all, it calls for Roma tomatoes. I don't have any Roma tomatoes. So what I'm going to do is put down a towel on a baking sheet. So it can soak up the moisture. And these are my kitchen towels that get stained from pulling out pizza crust out of the oven and everything else, so it's okay if they get stained by tomatoes. Put our rolling pin back in there. All right, so it says to cut these half an inch thick. That's pretty thick for a tomato slice. Now the parts that have the stem on it, obviously I'm not going to leave that on there. So I'll just cut that part off. That was my measuring cup for my flour. All right, I'm going to put these on the pan here. And I'm not sure how many I'm going to need, so I'm just going to slice several. And if we don't use those, then that'll just be something that will happily be put on a sandwich later on. Okay, I can always cut more, but for right now, that's what we'll use. Let me empty the tomato juice off this cutting board real quick. All right, what we want to do now is change over to our cheese mixture. This is my freshly grated Parmigiano Reggiano, and we need mayonnaise to go in this. I'm going to mix my mayonnaise in before I put my cheddar in there. And this is, although it says peanut butter, it's in a peanut butter jar. It is mayonnaise made with avocado oil. And if you would like to see our video that shows exactly how to make mayonnaise, and trust me, it's not hard, or I would not be doing it on a regular basis, then we will link that to this video, and you can watch that as well. So this calls for a cup of mayonnaise. I'm using between 3/4 and a full cup. I don't want it to be super oily, and I've never had this before, so I wouldn't even know the difference if it's different from somebody else's, but just the thought of it being super oily is not appealing to me. Even if it is a good oil like avocado oil, I don't want it super oily. I don't mind the super cheesy, but I don't want it super oily. All right. I'm going to stir this up. So that's half a cup of Parmesan and about 3/4 of a cup of mayonnaise. And then we have a full cup of sharp cheddar that I just shredded as well. I would encourage you to shred your own and not buy pre-shredded cheese that has a coating of cellulose on it. You know, it's cellulose. So if you don't know what cellulose is, you can look that up. But it's to keep it from sticking together like shredded cheese does. You leave it for sitting for very long and it's going to stick together, but you want it to look pretty in a bowl when you present it. But this is not one of those cases. You don't want the pre-shredded. I don't buy the pre-shredded ever. If it's served somewhere, I just kind of pass up on it unless I just have no option. But I'm just not a fan of pre-shredded cheese. Okay, so we have that mixture done. And then I'm going to chop up some green onions that I just went out in the edge of my flower bed in my so-called garden and picked. And they don't have to be chopped super fine, I don't think, just kind of rough chopped. And it says 1/4 of a cup of green onions, but as you can tell, I kind of like green onions. So we'll do a little more than 1/4 of a cup. That looks more like 1/3 to 1/2 a cup probably. And we also have some basil that I just picked off of one of my last living basil plants because the rest of them I've pulled up from the yard in the flower pots and processed them. I've had them out in the sunroom drying for several days, so that's actually what I did this afternoon. My hands were smelling really, really good because if you're not familiar with the fragrance of basil, it is so good. It's so good. It is probably one of my favorite fragrances, and I didn't even know what it smelled like a few years ago. It was crazy. All right, these are some leaves that I had in the refrigerator from the other day. This is what happens when you leave them in the fridge. They kind of turn colors, but it's going to turn a color when you bake it anyway, so I'm going to chop those up too. They kind of stick together too. All right, so that's our basil and our green onions. We're going to set those aside. This is one of those desserts they call for layering it. So we're going to sprinkle some salt on those. Let's see, I'm going to get salt that I already have. I have a salt grinder and I put coarse salt in it and it makes it super fine, but I don't necessarily need it super fine on this. It's going to dissolve once it hits the tomatoes anyway. I need that one flipped over though. Get over there, little guy. All right, now we will grind our pepper on there because I don't have a whole lot of pepper ground up already. I have some ground up, but not a lot. We're going to take our tomatoes and layer them in the bottom. Just kind of have to see what fits where. And then we'll put about 1/3 of this mixture on there, the cheese and mayonnaise. I'm going to show you the picture of this cookbook before this video is over with. I want you to know what this looks like. Like I said, it's got a lot of good recipes in it. There's another recipe in there that I'm itching to try too, so it may be one of my next ones. I don't know. But this one just piqued my interest. And my friend that gave me the book, she's so sweet. She's always thinking of me when she comes across stuff that she knows I'll like. Okay, about a third of each of these, the green onions and the basil. Then we'll do another layer of tomatoes. I think I'm going to need another tomato too. It says that on the last layer, make sure you can see the tomatoes through the cheese. So that means we need more on this layer than we do on the top layer. I can't remember if I told you or not, but I have my oven preheating to 400 degrees. Okay, more basil and more green onions. All right, I almost have enough tomato, but I'm going to slice up another one. Scoot them all down there. Oh, I think I need one more. Ah. Oh, at least I got enough salt and pepper on here where I can just put that on it. I don't have to keep getting out the salt and pepper. I don't know how big the Roma tomatoes are where this lady's from, but the lady that wrote the cookbook said 3 or 4 Roma tomatoes. No. That would not work on here. Okay, let me get the salt and pepper. Kind of rub it on there. Okay, I think that'll do. All right, we'll put our last bit of the cheese mixture on there. Let me get it over here in the front so you can see what I'm doing. I could see serving this with maybe some barbecue chicken or even pulled pork, something like that. That'd be really nice with this, I would think. I haven't tasted it yet, so I don't really know what I'm talking about. But it may be when I take a bite, I go, that needs nothing else with it. It's just perfect. It's just so pretty and colorful. All right, our last bit of basil and green onions. Okay, that looks nice. All right, we're going to pop this in the oven. And you know the drill. I'll show you when it comes out, what it looks like. We're going to cook it for 30 minutes. All right, I wanted you to see what I'm serving with this. This is some pulled pork that I made the other day. I may do a video on this soon because I have kind of this funky spice mixture that I put together and just put this in a slow cooker and cook it low all day. But this is just pulled pork, and I put a small container of it, see that small container of it, in the oven. So it's heating up with our tomato pie. So just so you know, it's not just tomato pie. Probably for lunch, that wouldn't be bad, a luncheon. But since this is dinner time, my husband expects something a little more filling. So we're putting this in with it, just so you know. All right, my timer just went off on the oven. So our tomato pie is ready, and I'm going to get it out in just a second. But I want to show you this book, first of all, so I won't forget. This is called Very Vera, the Very Vera Cookbook. And it's by a lady. And guess what? Her name's Vera. And she has a restaurant. And the story goes, they serve this tomato pie. Sorry about the clock. She serves this pie every day, and every day they sell out. Now, I don't know if her restaurant is still in existence or not, but this is the picture of her tomato pie. Look at that store-bought pie crust. No way. But I think this is going to be good. This is obviously before it's baked, but it's kind of sort of what mine look like. I don't know. I'm not really going for the look. I'm going for the taste. Let's pull it out of the oven. Okay, I'm glad I didn't put any more mayonnaise in there. I'll go ahead and get my little pan of pulled pork off there. Okay, here's the pulled pork. The video's not about the pulled pork. But we kind of got some oil puddling up on the side here, which is okay. I'm just glad I didn't put more mayonnaise on that because cheese is oily enough, but I'm gonna let this sit for a while and then we'll cut it up. And yes, for all those people who are commenting on my videos about, we would like to have seen you cut it and see what the inside is like, or seen you taste it, or something like that. I'll cut it and let you look at the inside. I always think, oh, do they want me to cut it on, do they want to see a picture of that? I don't know. People complain about the weirdest things, but you probably do want to see the inside of this. So I will cut a slice of it when it cools off just a bit and show you what that looks like. So anyway, we'll sum it up here by saying thank you so much for sticking with us, for watching the video, for being interested enough to tune in, and just thanks for your comments. And we look forward to sharing something again with you real soon. Next footage will be of me cutting into the pie. That's what you get for asking me to cut it so you can see it. It's still a little hot. We're gonna enjoy it no matter what. All right, so we just finished eating. This is my plate. Obviously, I didn't have a problem with it. It was really, really good. I would say the high moisture content, all that liquid floating around in there, it may have been the oil from my mayonnaise. I don't know. Chances are it was probably the juice from the tomatoes. I didn't use Roma tomatoes. Roma tomatoes are very meaty. The tomatoes that I used were not Romas. They weren't as dry as Romas, so there was a lot of juice in them. So in all fairness, had I used Romas, it would probably have looked better, but I don't know that it could have tasted any better. It has a mild, almost like a mild flavor of a pizza because of the basil and the Parmesan. The Parmesan Reggiano was really strong in this, which I loved, but the tomatoes just shone through. The pure butter crust just absolutely makes it. And even though it looks like a quiche, I sent a picture to my sister and she said, is that a quiche? And I said, actually, it's not. It's not eggy like a quiche. It's just a layered tomato pie. So I see why they call it tomato pie now. So anyway, I would suggest give this a try. It really is very, very good. Don't skip the fresh basil. Don't skip the really good tomatoes. Buy Romas if you find them, but if not, just go with it. Use really good cheese and really good mayonnaise too. So anyway, that'll make you happy. We ate about half of it just between the two of us, so it wasn't really bad at all. Thanks for joining us, guys. Bye.